Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 11, Investment Basics, which is a very complex topic. So we're going to go through this very quickly and just touch on some of the keys. I'm going to touch on one of the learning objectives. It's actually not in the book, but making sure you understand the steps to take before you even consider investing. These are the other ones that we'll rely a lot on the book to cover. But let's get right into some things, steps before you invest. First of all, some financial steps. Make sure you've established a solid insurance plan and have that covered in your budget. You don't want to be going cheap on insurance so you can invest in stocks and bonds. Make sure you've got a solid insurance plan covered. Make sure you've established a 3 to 6 month emergency fund of 3 to 6 months worth of expenses that's invested in a safe liquid asset such as a bank savings account. Make sure you've eliminated all your credit card debt and your auto loan debts. You don't want to be paying high interest so that you can invest in stocks. And fourthly, make sure you've established a working budget so that you know you've got a steady income that more than covers your expenses. Now, once you've covered those financial steps, I think there's some other things you need to think about before you invest. First of all, you got to understand no one can predict the future. So if somebody says this investment's guaranteed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I personally would run for the door. Secondly, you need to understand your risk tolerance. How are you going to handle potential ups and downs? How much risk are you willing to take psychologically? And there's some tools that I've linked to that you can test that for you. Third, be able to explain your investment to your grandma. You should be able to understand it very, very simply so you could explain to somebody in a minute or less what's going on with the investment. And fourthly, think about how long you can allow the investment to sit there, the time horizon, because that'll allow the ups and downs to kind of equalize each other. So once you've done that, you've got a couple options. First of all, just to give you a good rule of thumb for goal for savings for retirement, ideally you're saving about 15% of your income for retirement. You could have your fund or your investments managed, or you could have them non-managed, manage yourself. Diversification is very important. How are you going to avoid having all your eggs in one basket? And again, we'll talk about a lot of this in future chapters. And then fourthly, you have the option of a mutual fund, which again we'll explain in, I think, Chapter 14. You could invest with a brokerage firm, or you can do it all by yourself. Lots of options. Again, we'll go into more detail. But why would you want to invest in different things? Well, the reasons you'd want to invest in different things is as you do take on more risk, you'd potentially have higher returns. So historically, common stocks have returned a little over 10%. Bonds, which are like loans, have returned around 7, 8, 9%. And money market accounts or treasury bills or savings accounts are of course less risky, but they only return around 4%. So if you want higher returns, you take more risk. We talked about time horizon. Why time horizon is important. This chart shows you how many years stocks were held, what kind of gains they had, and I'll let you look at this. If you notice, over 20 years, it really equals out. You take away the volatility. That's why if you have a long time horizon, you're able to take more risk. All right, let's talk about how returns are measured, what's called the real rate of return, because first of all, there's what's called the nominal return. So if I purchase a stock for 100 and sell it for 120, I have a 20% return. But then I have to pay taxes on that, so I don't want to count that because that money goes to Uncle Sam. So I'll take my marginal tax rate and do the math, and that I have to subtract 5%. Then I normally take out inflation, because if I'm just keeping up with inflation, then I'm only treading water from a purchasing power standpoint. So then I'll subtract out my inflation, and what I'll end up is what's called the real rate of return, how much I'm getting ahead on money that I'm really actually getting. So that's a very quick overview. Again, it's Mr. Rankin. There's my email if you have any questions. Have a great week.